Hi, my name is Tara Kachaturoff, and I'm the host of Michigan Entrepreneur, where we feature businesses from startup to stellar. Today, I have as my special guest Karin Risko, owner and tour guide of City Tour Detroit. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tara. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me as a guest.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really excited to talk to you today because you have a really unique business and it's focused on the city of Detroit. But before we jump into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I am a former teacher, so people do ask that often on the tours, a former history teacher. And I've been in other fields, sales as well. I am technically, I guess, retired, so it's great to be doing this, having this tour business as perhaps my final chapter.
All right. Well, why don't you share with us the journey of starting City Tour Detroit? How did this business begin?
I guess you could say the idea was planted decades ago when I graduated from college. I had taken a Michigan history class with a focus on Detroit, and I just loved Detroit's history. And so just continued to learn about the city. And, back then I thought, how come we don't have tour companies like other cities, or why can't we take tours? Little did I know there were a couple at the time. But it wasn't really an entrepreneurial time like it is today. So, I pursued other fields. And then about a decade ago, I started doing tours on a small scale. Then in 2016, my phone was busy. Tourism really picked up. And I decided, it's now or never if I want to do this. And, I created City Tour Detroit, hired a few other guides, and the business was born.
So, how did you go about even? I know you had the idea, but did you put together a business plan? Did you just wing it? I mean, how did you do it? Was it really formalized, or did you just go out there and say, "I'm just doing this. Let's just get started"?
Tara, it was winging it. I'm not really a
Wow.
formal, I have the ideas, but like many people, trying to put it down into writing and that. So, no, I did not formalize a business plan, which I don't necessarily recommend just winging it. Probably a business plan. And best, most of all, where are you going to get your customers? I mean, you can create the best itineraries and things like that, but if you don't have the people to come. And initially, it was a little bit of a fumble. I mean, it took me much longer than maybe perhaps if I would have networked properly and things like that. But, sometimes entrepreneurs get these ideas and you just want to go with it.
Yeah, that's so true, so true. So how did you get those first customers? Because without customers, you don't have the business. How'd you get them?
When I think back, my very first tour was actually a Civil War landmark. So it was between Detroit and Monroe. And, this was, I want to say like 2009, 2010. I probably was not all that savvy with, the internet and that. So it was just contacting, I guess perhaps Meetup was big back then. Um, it was just contacting a few people that I knew via mailing them out flyers, and that's how I got the first tour. And then after that, it was a little bit difficult. It was probably word of mouth, but it was not as, I guess, sustainable as my business is today.
Yeah, yeah. Now you have all these other resources you can use to get the word out, which is great. But I really commend you for just going out there and like taking the idea and just doing it. And you had these warm contacts, and people you knew, and just pulled them together and got it started. And that's what it takes. It's reaching out. So that's fantastic. So can you tell us about some of the most fascinating aspects of Detroit's history that you like to highlight on tours? And then we'll break down how you do the tours and all that sort of detail in a minute.
So there are several spots. So I now have other tour guides
Hmm.
who mainly do the tours, especially because I have some health issues. So I just don't have the stamina. But when I go out on tours, of course, I love to highlight that it was Dr. King who first gave his I Have a Dream speech here in Detroit in June of 1963. 2 months before Washington, D.C. I love to tell the story of Joe Louis, by the
Hmm.
fist and, his rise and how he was raised to, the representing democracy during World War II. So those kind of stories. And of course, Motown Museum, I consider that one of the most important historic places. So I try to get people in the mood by singing before we, approach. When we're on a bus, before we approach the museum, and get people up on the steps to sing along, just because the story of Motown is so significant to Detroit. So those are a few. I mean, there's a million stories. Our riverfront, new developments that are happening, taking people by the train station and talking about how it was, shown worldwide as a symbol of Detroit's decay. And now people just can't wait for it to reopen. So lots of exciting things.
Yeah, yeah. So, how do you, you have different tours planned, but how do you, I know you talked about the Motown thing and having people sing on the bus before getting there, which is a great idea. I love that. But how do you ensure that each tour is unique and memorable for your guests? Like, what are you doing to continually like up the experience for your clientele?
So we try to include photo ops, and I try to encourage guides when we do the photo ops. You can take your standard pictures, but try to make it a little more memorable too. For example, the giant tiger. We will get a group there and take their photos, and a couple minutes later, I'm getting that having them act silly. Put up your left paw and roar. And they have fun, or by the fist, they're all doing the fist bumps. And so I like to incorporate, fun aspects in it. But we also try, sometimes it's a little more difficult when it is a bus tour for individual, but we try to find out where people are from and then incorporate, if there's any aspects of along the way on the tour that relates to where they might be from, we do, and, try to do that as well.
Oh, that's a great idea. So, like, if they're from another country or something, there's probably some connection to Detroit because it's a global, it's like an international city in many aspects because of, what was created here, all the entrepreneurialism in the car industry and all that, and hockey, of course. But that's such a great idea. I love that. So, yeah, I mean, that makes them feel really welcome too, to have that aspect maybe relating and tying back to their own culture and country. So, yeah, that's very interesting. So, I know that you're the author of A History Lover's Guide to Detroit, written a few years back. Can you tell us a little bit about that book and tell us how, you went about, doing the research and writing of this book?
So I do
There it
have,
is.
how's that?
All
I
right. Yeah,
do
I
have
can see it.
Yeah, I do
Thank
have the
you.
book with me. So, it was difficult for me, I'll have to say, because just like the business plan, I have all this knowledge or whatever in my mind, but to actually get it on paper and try to fit it in with a publisher's deadline and fit it in while I'm getting requests for, private tours, like January, February, March should be a great time to work on a book, but that's when you're getting requests from tour operators for tours that are going to take place in June, July, August, September. So there is not as much downtime as you would like for projects. So most of the information I knew, it was just deciding what to put in, and then a lot of things we're not always able to cover on our tours. So there's other significant events, but the book is written like as a tour guide format. So it's, starts downtown, how people could navigate the downtown area. They could go to Midtown, they could go to New Center. We even go out to, say, like Highland Park or where the Packard plant was, in it as well. So I think it's a great resource for people who are visiting the city or want to revisit it after not, coming downtown or coming to Detroit for a long time. So it just helps you, you're looking at a building or you're looking at a specific place, and then you can learn a little bit about it.
So Karen, how many years were you into your tour business before you decided to write the book?
It came out in 2018. So, I had the idea for a while, but I would say maybe 2016 is when I thought, oh, I need to have this, these ideas put down.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It's something, it fits so well with your business, and you can combine it as part of a package, or they could, like you said, they could buy it afterwards or before, and even read it before they go on a tour with you. I think that's a great idea. And if you didn't have the book already written, I would say you need to write a book. So you already
I
got
do
that done.
need
Check it off the list.
I do need to update it because, Detroit is unique in that, usually when you're talking about history, it's, you know, much the same, but so much has changed in the city in the last 10 years that, like I have an old picture of Michigan Central Station, which is kind of cool, but you'd like to see the newer picture in there as well. So I'm hoping that I can update it this year.
So were there also a lot of pictures in your book as well?
There are pictures, correct?
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
photos, yes.
Yeah. And I know that takes a while to get all situated, with the publisher too. I mean, that's a lot of work just to get the pictures and the permissions and all
Right.
of that. So what role, tours I've been on, over the years, storytelling is such a big part of it. How does storytelling play into the tours that you offer? And how did you gain the skills in storytelling? Because I know that's a big piece of like any kind of tour, because that's what keeps people captivated. Can you speak about that?
So I agree, storytelling is a huge part, but it is hard within, like, our tours are already kind of long. Our See the D walking tours say 3 hours, and there's so
Hmm.
much to tell a story for everything. So I like to tell my tour guides to pick several things that you're most passionate about. And those are going to be where you really tell them in a story format. You know, so for example, and everybody's passion is different. I found, I've got some guides that are very passionate about automotive, some that are, more the new developments or the art scene. Of course, mine is what I had mentioned earlier about Dr. King. So I set the story, a hot June, you know, afternoon there was a freedom march in town, so I try to tell that in story format. I try to tell the story of Joe Louis, Motown, those in story formats. And then of course I want to engage people, but some of the other things that I point out might be much shorter story.
Hmm. Hmm. I like that, each person that is a guide is picking out what they're passionate about, because that's what will really come through and shine through for them and the people that they're, leading on that particular tour. And speaking of particular tours, do you have them grouped by like genre? Do you have different types of tours? And if so, what are those different types of tours that you're offering in terms of like, I'm talking about like specialty areas?
Okay. So we do offer several different tours. I do not have all of them on my website or when people contact me about private tours.
Hmm.
Mainly, though, we focus on our See the D tours, like
Hmm.
general sightseeing tours,
Hmm.
because, it's hard to get people who are trained in all the other tours. I know them all, but as I mentioned earlier, I had health issues over the past 2 years, so it's hard for me to even do the tours. But our See the D, we do it on a walking tour, or if somebody wants us to hop on their bus, or we'll charter a bus, and then we take them around and give them a general overview. We go deep into many areas on that particular tour. But we have done, and we will reprise it this year, our incredible Journey to Midnight. It's the story of Detroit's role on the Underground Railroad. In the past, we have had actors who tell the story. I'm not sure if we're going to be doing that again. We just may have a narrator guide
Hmm.
on that particular one. And then one of our most popular genres, in which I've had to put on hold for the past couple years, is our notorious 313 true crime tours. I like to say
True
history isn't
crimes?
pretty.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And we go through the past and talk about old crimes and that, and people seem to enjoy that very much. So, I'm working on getting some guides trained in those areas. You go to New Orleans, you go to Savannah, all over the country. Those are popular tours. So
I
I'd
did
like
not
to,
know that. I did not know that. I know like true crime podcasts are popular, but I didn't even know they had tours. Wow, that's
right.
interesting. So you had mentioned in our pre-talk something about ghosts. Do you have a ghost tour?
You know what? We have, it used to be true crime and ghosts. And,
Oh, combined
yeah.
for more
And
fun.
a couple years ago, during the pandemic, actually, during 2020, we had this little window. I had hooked up with this gentleman who owned the former historic 6th precinct in Detroit. And so I did all kinds of research on the stories. And then we brought in paranormal groups because it is allegedly haunted. And you know what? Lots of people came on. They said hauntings for some reason. Ghosts don't ever, they might not like me. I don't know. I've never had the experiences, but even my friends had the experiences at the 6th precinct. So, you know what? You have to do stuff that you believe in. And I'm not sure that I shouldn't say this, but I'm not sure that I believe in ghosts. So I kind of, I tell people on our true crime tours that I take you to the places where tragedy occurred. And, if ghosts don't necessarily come on command, but they may come. So I leave it open to interpretation.
Yikes. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of ghosts. Interesting. So let's talk about the kinds of people who sign up for your tours. What's the mix of folks? Are you getting people, do you get a lot of people that are Michiganders already? Are you getting like out of state folks, global people from across the pond? What's the mix of people that are coming on your tours? What have you seen?
It's everyone. We get a mix. We get locals. A lot of times people want to rediscover their city, or they've just moved here, or it's people who've been here for a long time and they've got friends and family who are visiting. We get people from outstate Michigan. We get them from throughout the world, throughout the country, and then throughout the world, especially with Detroit being, as you mentioned, this international city, with all the industries. So sometimes people will come in, like corporate groups or corporations will hire us because they've got a group in. Their team is coming to Detroit for some meeting or whatever, and they want to show off the city a bit, or they have interns coming from throughout the country. So it really is a variety. And I've noticed the international aspect more in our retail store, which we recently opened. I decided that my New Year's goal is that I need to learn a few phrases in German, in French, and in Spanish. There are other countries, but I can only limit myself right away to, 3 of them. But I would like to at least some greetings,
Mhm.
for people, because we do have a lot of people. And even if, they're coming from Canada, but that they're initially a lot of times from another country as well. So the international flair that is going, or flavor that's in the city, is quite dominant.
I love this idea of having, companies bring in like their teams that are visiting or like their interns that are starting and have them go on a tour like this. I think what a wonderful way to get acclimated to the city and to understand some of the history. I think that's like a really good idea. That's a great angle
Right.
for companies. And even just a company outing, to do something different, in the summer, when it's, warm, not like it is right now. Um, So, what are some of the challenges that you have faced running a tour company? What have you had to deal with over the years? Just one or two
Marketing.
things.
Yeah, marketing is one of, the biggest things, especially when
Mhm.
you're a small company and you don't, you're winging it and you don't have a budget, So it's like, all right, what am I supposed to be spending my money on? So a lot of times you think, okay, well, I'm going to have to do it. Well, that can be a hindrance as well, because you really can't do it all. So, that is a tip that you need to get help in other areas early on. And then, I guess technology is another thing that can be something problematic. Is I initially I did create my own websites, and it's nice because you can update them and that, but then to create a nice looking website, I really don't have the knowledge and I don't want to spend the time to learn about it. So that's what I spend money on. And I guess the biggest hindrance for me has been health issues. And right after the pandemic, I was all excited for 2021, and I was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. So I was ready to close up then. And luckily, my guide stepped in and said, we'll do what we can. So, and then it came back again in 2023. So I'm dealing with metastatic breast cancer and ovarian cancer. So that can be problematic because sometimes you're just tired. You can do a little bit, and then your energy is, sapped. So it's hard to grow. So I would say that is one thing. It's, I've been maintaining the last 2 years, and in 2024, I hope that we grow and we soar.
I hope the same too for you. I know you've been dealing with these challenges, and we want to be there for you and stand behind you in getting better and making 2024 a great year for you, Karin.
Thank you. I
Yeah, and I'm
appreciate it.
so glad you have a team that's so supportive and is there for you in keeping this business running and going.
Yes. And there's still, my team has changed a little bit since 2021, but they're still all very, dedicated. Well, actually, Paul is still here, but they're all dedicated and helping me out. And that is, in one way, that might be a blessing because you do want your business to be able to run independent of you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Question, how do you go about finding the tour guides that you've hired? How did you identify these people?
So in 2016, when I decided I was going to just go for it, I don't know, maybe it was Craigslist or something that I advertised on. And, we held a meeting, and probably 6 people came to the meeting, and I ended up, 2 of them, worked for me for several years and were fantastic guides. And it was great because they were just very interested in Detroit. So they were constantly, looking up places and very interested in dining out and that. So they were trying all the new places, which, it's great to have a knowledge of Detroit's history, but you need to know what's going on now too, so you can make recommendations. So they were with me for a long time, and just every once in a while, we would add a few more people. Last year, I actually got more official and put a template or a questionnaire on my website so that people can go to citytourdetroit.com, and under About Us is a Join Us section. And it's kind of a lengthy questionnaire, but I figure it weeds out who's serious and who isn't.
Yeah.
And so, that's where we've got some other good guides, and sometimes just word of mouth. People, last year we got an excellent guide. He just knew one of my guides from another tour that they had done for one of the cruise ships, and he was excellent, but he was only here for the summer. So, you know, we're always looking for guides to put it out there, just because people can sometimes, they can only work for a short time.
Yeah, yeah. The prior comment you made got me thinking you could have a tour called Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner Detroit. Because it would be kind of fun to have a breakfast, do some touring around the city, lunch, and then some more touring, and then an early dinner or supper. That could be another tour you could add for this coming year.
I love that idea, and then you get to showcase,
Yeah,
different restaurants and maybe go in a shop or two.
yeah.
That's a great idea. I love it,
Yeah, you
especially
can
for,
do a whole shopping tour too. That could be another thing, is hit a bunch of little boutique stores. Question for you. You had mentioned retail store. Can you tell us a little bit about that? that you have right now, just real quick?
Yeah. So right behind me, yeah,
Yeah.
let me indicate is the Guardian Building, beautiful Guardian Building. And a year ago, December, became aware that the space was available. I didn't even inquire about it because I never thought it was, I don't know, a viable option.
Hmm.
I had been looking around for years, and then all of a sudden, right in Detroit's most visited building was this space. And it was small because, I didn't need a huge space, but I've always wanted to have a souvenir component as part of my tours,
Oh, okay.
especially for a lot of the group tours. They're
Hmm.
coming in, a tour operator books a tour of the state of Michigan and they're coming through Detroit, and it's a short time that they're here. They really don't have time to go around and shop. So they're coming into the Guardian Building and they can come in my shop and grab a souvenir. So it's always been an idea that I've wanted to do. And so in May of 2023, we opened up the
Oh,
last week in
great.
May. And it's been a great journey. I'd have to say, August, which is usually a bad month in retail, was tied with December for sales. And it's because I realized all the foreign tourists from Europe, they have the month off in August and they're
Ah,
all traveling. So just interesting things that you learn.
wow, that's fantastic. Well, I love how you got the city tour of Detroit, you've got retail, you've got a book, you've got all things going. I love this. So, as we begin to wrap up here, one quick question for you. So, what's the future plan for City Tour Detroit? Can you sum that up? What you plan to do going forward?
So we do plan on adding a few more tours. We plan on adding our See the D walking tours.
Hmm.
Typically, we offer it Wednesday through Sundays at one time. We're going to start to offer it 2 or 3 times, and we're going to start to. I've held off for a long time, but list on the online travel agencies like Viator
Hmm.
to help fill up some of those tours. And, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, but
Excellent.
focus a lot on marketing.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, my very last question to you today, Karen, is what's your one piece of advice to entrepreneurs?
Hire out assistants early, like, a webmaster or a website designer or a bookkeeper. The tasks that you don't enjoy or you're just not good at or take your time away from your creative purpose, hire those out. And just another quick one, seek out experts, coaches in your field, take workshops, attend conferences, and seek out any coaching sessions. But just be careful that it's in your field, that they're run by people who know what you're doing.
Well said. All right. Thank you so much, Karin Risko, owner and tour guide of City Tour Detroit, for being a guest today on the program.
Thank you, Tara. It has been a pleasure.
Absolutely. If you'd like more information about our program, please visit us at michiganentrepreneurtv.com. Please join me again in the future when I interview another enterprising entrepreneur. Until then, wishing you the best of business.